Hey, what up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Golf Parfection podcast. And in this one, I'm building my dream 18-hole course using holes from Monterey and also the Bay Area. So let's go ahead and get started. Obviously, this is all my subjective preferences. Your game might be different than mine, and you might have more of a preference for different holes than I do. So before we jump into this, there's going to be a few rules here. Rule number one is that holes have to be from a course that I have played and then also made a video on. Rule number two is that it has to be a public course because I want there to be a lot of discourse in the comments. Rule number three, the hole has to correlate with the actual hole on the course that it's picked from. Meaning if I pick hole 10 from a course, it has to be the hole 10 in this exercise. And lastly, rule number four, once I use one hole and course combination, that course can no longer be used. So now that we set the rules, let's go ahead and get started. All right, hole number one, this was probably one of the harder decisions to make. There are some really cool holes that are the first holes on courses in Monterey and the Bay Area. One is Spyglass comes to mind, the awesome downhill par 5. That's a dogleg left. A little one that's maybe more out there is Juan. That's a cool starting hole. And when I played it, I thought it was pretty neat. It's a downhill par 4. But the hole number one that I chose to start off this whole thing to build my dream 18-hole golf course is Pasatiempo. So hole number one at Pasatiempo is a par 4, 440 yards from the tees that I play from. And the starter there does a really good job in making you get bought into the history and gives you the whole spiel on Alistair McKenzie. And it's a first hole that really sets the tone and lets you know that you're in for a treat. So that is the first hole on my dream 18-hole golf course. So going through this exercise, I can no longer pick Pasatiempo or any holes from that golf course. All right, so hole number two here, interesting enough, I think like the second hole on a lot of courses maybe gets overlooked and actually struggle a little bit to find a hole here. One that does come to mind, which is a sleeper pick, is actually San Jose Muni. If you played there, it's an interesting hole. And you really have to be strategic about it. I mean, it's not like, the most amazing, beautiful ever, but it is a strategic design. And I do have some holes in this list that are more based on that rather than just being beautiful or having crazy uphill or downhill vantage points. So the course that I picked for my hole number two is Half Moon Bay Ocean Course. This is a downhill par 4. It's only 297 yards. A pretty intimidating landing area, but the views that it offers for a hole number two is pretty spectacular. The course itself is amazing. I was hesitant to put the Half Moon Bay Ocean Course this early on my Dream 18, but I just had to because of how things turned out. The vantage point you get from the tee box is beautiful, and my breath was really taken away after looking out onto that intimidating tee shot. So that is my hole number two. All right, hole number three. I think this one was maybe too much of a low-hanging fruit, but I just had to use it. One dark horse that did come to mind was Cinnabar and the Lake Course, hole number 3, which is a downhill par 4, which is very scenic. Obviously, the hole 3 that I'm going to pick is Spyglass. So if you see Spyglass and pictures of Spyglass, everyone has a photo from here. This is a par 3, 126 yards downhill. Probably the most photogenic hole on Spyglass. I just feel like that's the most popular photograph hole. May not be the most brilliantly designed hole, but when I think of a hole number 3, I definitely think of that one in particular. Yeah, and I don't think I could go wrong with that, but I could be corrected. If you can think of better holes than me, obviously within the rules that I have set for myself, let me know. All right, hole number 4. This is where it kind of gets muddied a little bit. I had to go through, jog my memory, watch a lot of old vlogs to see which hole number 4 stood out. I was thinking maybe Presidio, because it has a cool downhill par 3 as a cool hole number 4, but I ultimately settled on hole number 4 at San Juan Oaks. So this is a 365 yard par 4. It's downhill and it's really picturesque, and they always have this thing mowed beautifully where there is these the hash marks onto the fairway. It's pretty intimidating off the tee, but then you realize the landing area is quite large. But I think it's just a cool hole in general, so that's why it makes it on this list for my Dream 18. Also, I know San Juan Oaks it's kind of like cutting it close between Bay Area and Monterey Peninsula. There's one other course that I stretched at a little bit, but so be it. And speaking of stretching that location just a little bit, hole number 5 is Crazy Horse. Number 5 hole at Crazy Horse is a downhill par 3, 190 yards. It's just one of the crazier downhill holes. I think Crazy Horse offers a really neat vantage point, and you can see out into kind of the agriculture in the background. So I thought it was cool to include this one. But hole number 5 is the par 3 at Crazy Horse Ranch. Okay, hole number 6 coming up here. One course that did come to mind was Black Horse. They do have this cool uphill drivable par 4. But ultimately, I ended up settling on a hole from Crystal Springs. So hole number 6 at Crystal Springs is a downhill right to left par 4. I'd say it's almost a mini or light version of number 1 at Spyglass. I mean, it's probably rough to make that comparison because Spyglass is a par 5, but the concept is similar. It's just a sweeping, huge downhill dogleg left hole. I think it's a really cool hole. There's like a gazebo off to the side as well where you can get some nice pictures, but you can see into the valley and see all these trees. And it's definitely a hole that caught me by surprise. And holes like that definitely leave a lasting impression on me. And most, if not all holes on this list left that lasting impression on me. So yeah, number 6 is Crystal Springs. All right, moving on to hole number 7. I didn't really have to think twice about this one, and that is hole number 7 at Pebble Beach. Now, of course, you might roll your eyes and think, oh yeah, of course you picked this hole, but I think when it comes to famous holes and then numbers they correlate with, if you say, hey, what's a really cool hole that's on hole number 7 for any golf course, I think a majority of people will answer Pebble Beach. It's just one of the most iconic, famous par 3s. You know, from what I play from it, it's only 94 yards downhill. And yeah, that's why it makes this list. Pretty much, yeah, I can't think of any other hole 7s, you know, that would make it or that would take its place between Monterey and the Bay Area. And I could be wrong here, but I think other holes that fit into this category are like number 12 at Augusta, you know, holes like that. So I think Pebble Beach is, you know, firmly within that same conversation of iconic holes in terms of correlating to a specific number. All right, coming up to hole number 8, I had to think about this one for a little bit. One course that does come to mind is Corica, the South course. It's a cool drivable par 4 that everyone waits for, and I think it's interesting. And depending how you play it, it can go really bad or really well or really bad. But I ended up settling on Spanish Bay, which is a 146-yard par 3. You have the 17-mile drive off to the right, and then the whole green is, you know, surrounded by sand, and it's just a beautiful, well-done hole. And it's also very tough and intimidating, so that's why that is my hole number 8. All right, hole number 9, there's a lot of good hole number 9s out there, but the one that just comes to my mind, and maybe this is a sleeper pick, because it's maybe not one of the most popular courses, is actually San Ramon. The 9th hole at San Ramon is 323-yard par 4, but it has probably one of the very few island-like greens in the Bay Area or even Monterey. Probably the only notable hole on that course. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of that course. I mean, I'll play it if it's the only thing available. But yeah, that hole number 9, I do look forward to it because it's pretty neat and you don't get too many island greens to hit to. So that's why it's hole number 9 for my dream course. All right, coming up to hole number 10. This one was kind of hard for me because this course has a lot of good holes. But for my 10th hole on my dream course, I picked Poppy Hills, which is a 458-yard par 5. I think it's just a super cool par 5. There is a notable strategic tree that always seems to get in my way on my second shot. I think it's a hole that you can be very strategic about, or you can just play it super easy. I think it's just a really cool hole, really nice design, and really beautiful. So Poppy Hills, hole number 10, is my pick for the 10th hole on my dream course. All right, coming up to hole number 11. One hole that did come to mind that I didn't select is Laguna Seca. Laguna Seca has this really cool dogleg right hole that you can just hit over all of these trees and take a huge shortcut to be either on the green or short of the green. But ultimately, I settled for the number 11th hole at Pacific Grove. So Pacific Grove, hole number 11, par 4, downhill, 303 yards. Pretty wide, so you can really go for it. You can almost go for the green, but it's a forgiving driving hole too because it's very wide. And it's just really cool. I think it's the hole in the back nine that really starts the magic of the back nine of Pacific Grove. Like hole number 10, you're like, oh, it's just a short par 3. But then you get to hole number 11, you start walking down the hill and you see that, oh man, this is going to be a special back nine. So hole number 11 at Pacific Grove, my favorite hole there and one of my favorite golf courses. So I had to put it at number 11 in my dream golf course. All right, hole number 12 might be a little controversial. One hole that I did consider was Calipe. It's like 300 yards and it's a left to right hole, but you could drive it if you have if you have the means to. But it's a very strategic hole as well, and it just looks really cool. There's a lot of holes at Calipe that I thought could make this list, and number 12 was one of them. But ultimately, I settled for hole number 12 at Shoreline. So yeah, a bit controversial. Shoreline is definitely not a course that is on the top of a lot of people's list to even play. I will say the 12th hole at Shoreline is a pretty good one. It's very strategic. You can either play it safe and straight out and then have a long second. The more you cut off on the dogleg left, the easier your second shot is. Or some people just try to go for it. It also helps I picked this hole and I did get a hole out on it, so that was pretty crazy. My 12th hole on my Dream 18 is Shoreline. All right, hole number 13. When we're getting into these 12, 13, 14th holes, I really struggle to find holes from memory of courses that, I've played way back when. But yeah, let me know if that's the case for you where, like you remember some iconic holes on a course, but not all 18. So when it gets to holes number 12, 13, 14, or 15, I kind of get a little bit lost. So my hole 13, ultimately I picked Del Monte. The 13th hole at Del Monte is a par 5. It's 495 yards. I think it's a really cool drive off the tee box. It's between like these, row of trees, and then it's like a huge landing zone. And then on top of that, that fairway, it's always in great shape and it's beautifully done. It's very inviting. I just feel like I want to lay on it sometimes. So that is my 13th hole on my Dream 18 hole golf course. All right, coming up next, hole number 14. I really struggled to find one here. Let me know if you know a better hole 14. Maybe can replace it on my particular list. But I put Franklin Canyon as my hole 14, which is a downhill par 4, 363 yards. You can either play it safe and then have an easy second shot into the green, or you can YOLO it and just go for the green off the tee box. Someone in my group that joined me for that round actually did that. They were only a few, maybe like 10 feet off the green. And so very cool hole. Risk reward. I always like holes that make you really think about your next shot, and that is no exception. Rounding out here, we're on hole 15. Some holes that come to mind is Lake Chabot, which is a drivable par 4. Corica South has a really awesome par 5 that you can sometimes go for 2, but it's the ultimate risk reward hole because there's sand traps everywhere on the second shot. But I ultimately settled on hole 15 at Presidio. So this is just kind of basic par 3 downhill, 147 yards. However, you're just looking out into the city, and when I played there was a little bit of fog, and it really felt like, wow, this is what San Francisco golf is all about. And then you can see a lot of the holes there as well. I really like golf holes where you have a cool vantage point, where you see a lot of the golf holes that you have played, and then you can also see the golf holes that are upcoming. So yeah, hole number 15 is Presidio. All right, the last 3 holes here. I feel like this one will be not controversial, but maybe a lot of people haven't played. Hole 16, some holes that came to mind were obviously TPC Harding Park. That's the famous Colin Morikawa hole. Another one was Half Moon Bay Ocean. Probably has the best views on the entire course in my opinion, but I already used Half Moon Bay Ocean course earlier on hole number 2. But the hole that I ended up landing on was hole number 16 at Shadow Lakes in Brentwood. So this is a downhill par 4, 350 yards, and I picked this one because honestly I've never really encountered a hole quite like it. You can be very strategic about it. I feel like the green could almost, I doubt it, but it seems like the green is almost drivable. But the green is not an island green, but the inlet to the green is actually it's decently wide, but from far away it looks like an island green. The further left and forward you go, the closer you'll be for your second shot. But it's pretty tough because I feel like a lot of people just go straight out and try to get as close to the water as possible. But if you mess up that tee shot, you chunk your tee shot, you're gonna have a super long second shot to carry water onto this green. And that's why it's on my dream course, because for me mentally, I did take note of it, and it's probably a hole that I won't forget. So that's why I had picked Shadow Lakes, hole 16. All right, the last 2 holes, hole number 17. One hole that came to mind was the downhill par 3 at Bayonet. That one's a pretty neat hole, but I settled on Coyote Creek tournament course, which is a 496 yard par 5, and it has a green that's surrounded by water. I don't know if it's like island-like, cool design, good strategy. It ticks all the check boxes, so that's why it's on my dream golf course. All right, hole 18. we're at the end of the list. And this is one of the harder decisions I had to make because there's a lot of good courses out there and a lot of good finishing holes. One that's kind of out there is Lake Chabot because it's a par 6 and that's very unique. The only par 6 that I've ever played on personally. Don't know what any other par 6s are in California, let alone the nation. Of course, there's Pebble Beach, number 18, which is super iconic, but I already used Pebble Beach earlier on hole 7. And another one that came to mind is Cinnabar. I forget which of the 2 9s it is, but I kind of cheated there because, there's 27 holes at Cinnabar, but one of the finishing holes on one of the 9s is a beautiful downhill, scenic, hilly par 5, which is, it looks great. And if you have the sun setting behind or if there's a lot of clouds, it looks so remarkable. But the hole that I have picked for my 18th hole on my dream golf course using holes from the Bay Area and Monterey is actually at Half Moon Bay, the old course. This is a par 4, 369 yards, and you have the beautiful ocean to the right. It's definitely one of those holes you won't forget because of the challenge that you face. The hole is challenging because there's a lot of people watching. There's some people warming up in the practice area on your left. And if you don't hit a good first shot, your second shot is a hard carry shot into the green. There is some safety short, but yeah, pretty much, hole 18 at Half Moon Bay Old Course is one of the most memorable holes that I can think of. And honestly, if it wasn't for that 18th hole, I'm not sure if the Old Course would be all that worth it. But to me, that hole it's got everything. It's got good strategy, it's got good design, it has beautiful views, and then it's very memorable for how difficult it is. And, the challenge that it presents for most golfers, because you're hitting into a green. There's a lot of people just on the patio or, getting food, or I don't know what's out there, a restaurant or whatever, or just, lounging around watching, and you got to hit some pretty good shots. So that is my 18th hole. All right, so that is pretty much the end of the exercise. That is my dream 18-hole course using holes from the Bay Area and also Monterey. Let me know if you guys enjoyed that one. I had a lot of fun putting this list together for you guys. Let me know if I missed any holes that were more notable than the ones that I listed. It was a little limiting, but only using one hole from one course I think was more fair because then I would pick multiple holes from like Pebble Beach or Spyglass, and so it wouldn't be that intriguing of a video and the discourse wouldn't be there. But yeah, get into the comments, comment what your favorite holes are in the Bay Area or Monterey area. I really want to hear from you. So I hope you guys enjoy that one. Keep chasing, and we'll see you in the next one.